I need to make my customer success team more commercially minded. And it's not just one conversation. It is almost every single conversation.
It becomes down to an identity thing. If that CS person doesn't see themselves as a salesperson, and yet they're being asked to sell, that conflicts with their identity.
I think there is a lot of stigma still around salesy. I don't want to be salesy. I'm afraid of that. A lot of those narratives are just real for people. That mindset of, I have something that can help you, actually really helps us be better salespeople, right? That's the attitude shift. No. Keep that mindset. Help them.
We're not selling, we're servicing, we're helping. That's our jobs.
Welcome to Building Your Sales Engine. I'm your host, Mark McGraw. Everybody, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. This is Mark McGraw. Hey, today I'm going to sit down with Kelly Ross and Steve Popp, who are phenomenally talented people in the enablement world. And we're going to talk about a trend that we're seeing in terms of organizations wanting to optimize their teams and the transition that we're seeing a lot of organizations do where they're taking their client success team members who aren't normally selling and turning them into salespeople, and all the pros and cons and all of the things that we as leaders need to think about that when we make that transition. So I'm super looking forward to this episode. We see this a lot with people right now in terms of them maximizing revenue. So looking forward to diving in. Kelly, Steve, welcome back to Building Your Sales Engine. Good to have you both back with us. Kelly.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Indeed.
And I'm super stoked, Mark. I think we had joked right before we hit the record button. I think I was on your very first podcast, and I'm super excited to be back.
You were guest number one. We're now in the 60s or 70s now in terms of episodes. And in fact, you were the first person that I reached out to when we started to do this way back when. And so glad to have you here. And Kelly, you and I have run a couple of podcasts as well, a couple of episodes together as well. Why don't we do this? Let's start here with Steve, and let's have a quick intro for people to know your background as we dive into this topic around optimizing resources and generating more revenue. Steve, tell us a little bit about your background and why you got here.
Yeah, I mean, through my entire career, I've carried the bag. Then I was in sales management, then went into sales training, then into sales enablement, and then spent the last 13 years really in a SaaS environment working for a digital marketing company many of you may know called Epsilon. And got to do everything from rev ops, sales ops, revenue enablement, sales enablement, and leadership development. So this topic has been brought up many times in the last couple of years. So excited to dive into it.
Yeah, we're gonna unpack this thing so that people that are thinking about it can have some best practices and some things that we've seen across the board. And Kelly, I think it helpful for everybody a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in sales and marketing roles for the last 25 years, primarily in ed tech and SaaS. That led me into enablement most recently, and kind of that sort of evolution too of where we first started calling it sales enablement, and then we started calling it revenue enablement, which is really relevant to our conversation today to make sure we're fully inclusive of all customer facing roles. So lots of exposure with all of these teams, and excited to talk about it more today.
And we picked this topic simply because we're all seeing companies do what I'll describe more and more. Steve, why don't you lay it out in terms of like we've all seen the same things. That's why we're running this particular episode. But Steve, what is it that you're seeing that we're all seeing in terms of revenue operations and generating more revenue?
Yeah, a lot of the focus that I have right now is just engaging with SaaS organizations, normally from about 5 million up to about $250 million. And what I'm just observing as I'm talking to the CROs is when I ask the question, what's the number one priority for you to drive revenue in 26? It has consistently been I need to make my customer success team more commercially minded. I need them to be part of the revenue growth from a renewal and an expansion point of view. And it's not just one conversation. It is almost every single conversation.
I have a meeting tomorrow on this very topic with a client of ours, and that's their number one thing that they want to work on as well. And so, yeah, we're all seeing it. And Kelly, have you seen similar things? What would you add?
Same. Yeah. I'd echo what Steve said. Same. It's very similar conversations. And in some cases they're like, we're actually pretty good on the sales side of our org right now in terms of, skills and training. And we've given them the foundation, and it's time to move over here. And I'm also seeing a lot of the, hey, we can't just talk about sales when we talk about upskilling and training. We've got to be inclusive of the entire revenue org, across the board. Yeah.
And so for definition, for everyone, when we say CS or we say, client success or customer success, generally what we're talking about here is a role in an organization, which a lot of organizations have this role, not all. And that role is to take care of clients after they become customers. And so it's the ongoing support and making sure that whatever it is that's being sold is adopted, it's used, that the client is experiencing good stuff. In many cases, there's a renewal involved. And so whether it's an account management role or a client success or a customer success, different titles are used. But these are not people that wake up every day and are accustomed to having to go sell and to go find business. They've got little inklings of it, but it's not necessarily something that they were hired to go do.
Exactly. And here's the thing I see is this role, you just said some of it, but it's from implementation, maybe product training, product knowledge, touching into some of those pieces, making sure that they're fully aligned with all their stakeholders, that ongoing relationship, right? And then getting into the retention and expansion and upselling part. Like, this is a big role, is it not? It's really a big role in many places. It's a lot of work. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to be on top of.
Yeah, I'd also add on to that, Kelly, that the observations that I've seen from whether you're at that $5 million mark in revenue all the way up to multi-billion-dollar companies, I think I'm seeing, again, this trend of when you're smaller, everybody wears a ton of hats, and it's really hard to define exactly what customer success or account management and even client development. And there's so many different variations of that. But I think when you're smaller, everybody wears the same hat. But as you start to evolve and you start to parse out these individual responsibilities, it becomes a little more clear as far as what your role and responsibility across a RACI chart might be. But at the same time, now we're blurring the lines back over again of saying, hey, CS a year ago, if we would have defined it in the marketplace, it probably truly was customer success. Are you utilizing your product well? How can you utilize it better? Are you driving the value and the return off of investment for your product? And it's my job to make sure that exists. In many ways, I think of that as a revenue role still, but they weren't necessarily responsible for the renewal, and they may not have been responsible for identifying growth or revenue opportunities. Now that role is evolving. They're asking for more. They're saying, hey, you already have the trust of the customer, the ear of the customer, and the consistent conversation with the customer. You are the prime candidate for this opportunity. And all we have to do is give you the skills to execute and make sure you're willing to do it. That right there is the hook, because we have definitely moved the role, responsibility, and expectation on a traditional CS person. And that, as you stated before, Mark, is the challenge. That's what we're dealing with today.
So a few things here that need to happen. That person in this role needs to recognize this an expansion opportunity. We should talk about that because sometimes these opportunities are just flying right by them, and they're not conscious of them or thinking about, oh, that's an expansion opportunity for us, whatever it might be. And there's a lot of different ways that something can get expanded, of course. And then the other thing is that now we're asking someone who has never approached someone about buying something directly and selling and I'm putting air quotes, if you can't see, if you're listening, air quotes around selling. And that's uncomfortable for certain people. And that's not what they were hired for initially, but now they're being asked to do that. So, Kelly.
Yeah. So, you got me thinking a little bit. When I started in my first sales role, and it was 2004, my role at that time, and this was in education, was I did it all, right? So I did the acquisition, found the new business, and then I trained them, and I did a lot of the support post sale. So a lot of just sort of the full evolution of their journey was my responsibility. And that evolved over time, right? Like that was 20 some years ago. And I know this is industry dependent and everyone has a variation and a flavor on this, but then it was like, okay, too much. We got to break this up. Let's start evolving other roles. And so it made sense, right? I think there has been this like evolution of the role and the meaning, but now we're at this new place, I think, where when do we hand it back to the salesperson, right? When is it their responsibility? And Steve, you said it, the lines are a little blurry. Every company seems to have their own variation on who manages what, but the hiring piece is really interesting. What were you hired for? Maybe not anything like what you think you're doing now. And yeah,
And meanwhile, management, heck, I've done this. Let's be honest. I've done this too, is that you hire somebody and you hire them for that particular role, which again, wasn't necessarily a full on sales role. And here's how I see the logic go from a CRO is like, well, and you guys called it out. We've got this person that's already talking to the customer. They should be seeing these expansion opportunities. Why don't we make them even more of a sales role than what they have today, where they're no longer just servicing and supporting, they're now selling, another S. And, lots of potential head trash around that. And, Steve, I know, you and I've chatted about this. It's the who moved my cheese conversation with this employee who now is being asked to do a different job. So let's just dive and tackle into that one right there. I mean, how do leaders, when they've hired somebody to do X and now we're asking them to do purple, which is something, largely different, how do we navigate that conversation with people so that they're more comfortable with something that they haven't necessarily been hired for?
Yeah. Kelly, did you want to jump on this one? Looked like you had a smile on your face.
No, I'm just laughing at it. You started with X and moved to purple. That was a great
It's completely different, right? I mean,
right. Or even speaking the language.
It's probably a little bit more than what it needs to be said in this case, because they're still talking to the customer, but they certainly were not hired to approach people about new opportunities. And that's
my story around that, Mark, is I'm like, it's like a roofer. You have a roofer whose job is to take care of the roof of the house. And then you have a plumber whose job is to take care of the inner workings of the house. They're both working on the house, but they have very unique and specific skill sets. And let's be honest, it'd be tough for me to find a roofer that would want to go do plumbing and vice versa, right? So this is no different than what we're asking a CS person to now take on some commercial responsibilities. And so to me, it's always the conversation of skill and will, right? And it always has to start with will first. Do you even want to do this role and have these new responsibilities? And it should be a safe and comfortable conversation where the answer can be no. And if it's no, it doesn't necessarily mean we should be exiting you out of the organization and we don't want you, in this particular role anymore. It may be an evolution of a role. It may be moving you and your skills to a different part of the organization. In some organizations, it may be that we need to just break these two teams apart and we have a true CS function and then we have a more revenue focused function. It just depends on what the specific need is. But I always say you have to start with the will and you have to accept the fact that they may say no and that they have the right to say no, and decisions then need to be made. And you need to be upfront and honest with them too, of saying, if this is the role we need moving forward, you don't want to do it. Let's have a very honest conversation about what the future looks like. And you have some choices and I have some choices, but at least now we're having this conversation. We're not ignoring it. We're not sticking our head in the ground. So it always has to start with will.
Yeah. And that makes total sense. Now I could see an employee a CS person, client success person, or customer success person who now is being asked to go sell. And again, not that we're asking them to make cold calls. We're asking them to look for more expansion business within existing accounts, other rooftops, other products. Because a lot of companies sell a solution and the customer may be only buying one product from the solution. So that person is now expected to go sell products B, C, and D as opposed to just A.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a difficult conversation for some people. I could see them sometimes feeling as if they need to say to their boss, yeah, I'll do it, boss, but having their foot on the brake while they're saying that. Anything that would protect them to make that easier on that employee, to be honest.
It's about mindset. Mm-hmm. And Kelly and I have had this conversation a few times. So Kelly, after I'm done, I know you'll have some thoughts on this one. But when you get into the will conversation, you have to talk immediately about mindset. And what I normally do is I say, let's talk about what you're already doing versus what we're going to ask you to do more. And believe it or not, what we're going to ask you to do more, you might already be doing. You just aren't recognizing that you're doing it. Right. And so that mindset starts to shift them of going, hey, all we're asking you to do is continue to drive the success for the customer, show them the value that they're getting out of the program, make sure that they're utilizing it as best as possible. And when things come up like, hey, we're having some challenges here, or there's some other areas that we really need work with, then you just change your consulting hat, which you're all consultants already. And that's the word I use. I don't use sales. I use consultants. You're already a consultant to the client. Now all you have to do is ask 2 or 3 questions. That's it. And you're probably already doing that. You just don't know that you are. And now you just collect that information. And once you've collected the information, it's time to phone a friend. Kelly, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's spot on. There's like this nuance, right? Because a lot of these conversations are already happening. They're often qualifying pain without knowing they're qualifying maybe new pain that was different than what the, original sale was about. But there's just this little subtle tweak sometimes that needs to happen of following that more sort of prescribed, okay, I got to make sure that I go a little deeper into this conversation, or, oh, hey, they said something, instead of just taking it at the surface level, let's drive deeper into what the impact is and, just going a little deeper there. And also, let's be real. I think there is a lot of stigma still around salesy. Yeah. I don't want to be salesy. I'm afraid of that. And there's mindset, head trash around it. If I'm selling, I don't want to turn them off. A lot of those narratives are just real for people.
I'm going to lose the rapport with the client. I'm going to lose my trust because now I'm selling something. I could see that.
Yeah,
could see that. It really is. I mean, in no small part, it becomes down to an identity thing. If that CS person doesn't see themselves as a salesperson, and yet they're being asked to sell, that conflicts with their identity. And to your point, in terms of the stigma that they may have in their own head about what this is like, that's going to stop them. That's going to cause them to put their foot on the brake and not want to have these conversations. And the thing I think as a leader, we need to be on the lookout for is the fact that they may not tell us this outright. There may be an unconscious foot on the brake while they're doing that, such that they're not doing those behaviors, even though they say that they will. So we just got to be careful and conscious of that. And I think, to both of your points, keep them safe in the conversation. If they feel like they're going to lose their job if they answer the wrong way, that's not going to be a good environment to be in.
That's right. Yeah. And then, I think going deeper into skill, developing sales antenna, right? Like it is a skill for sure. And the more that you get into it and kind of learn, okay, what to look for and listening deeper, I think those are some of the things that just no one has ever gotten training on necessarily. It's not their fault. That was not the role 5 years ago. There's an evolution. There's work to be done. There's help out there. And they often do have the will and mindset, really close. So it's just a little bit of encouragement along the way, I think, that can really make an impact.
So on the
Yeah.
skill side, we can teach them the right questions to ask. We can teach them what to listen for. That's a big one right there to me. That they need to be taught to have, and you use the word antenna, which is a perfect word for it. Their antenna needs to be up. Their radar needs to be up to be looking for certain things that then it will trigger them to ask some follow-up questions. And
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, there's a natural point. Many of them do some level of a QBR with their clients.
Yeah.
And so even, you already touched on the skill piece. The first thing we want to do is give them the antenna. The second one we want to do is give them just the simple questions. And they're not tough questions. These aren't complex questions. These are almost natural evolution of the conversation questions. And then, the third part about it is making sure you're creating an environment that those questions make sense, right? And when they're doing QBRs, traditionally, when I'm working with clients, what I see the QBRs are more updates on product. It's more about technical usage, how many seats are being executed, things along those lines on the SaaS platform. And what I said to them, I'm like, these are great, but let's shift it just a little bit to talk about here's the reason why we started working together. Here are the original challenges that you had brought to the table that our solution is now tackling. Are those still relevant, or are there new priorities? Are there new things that we should be talking about? That's it. That's the natural evolution of finding additional opportunities. And if you build it into a deck that you use on a consistent basis or on a quarterly basis, it's just, again, the natural evolution of the conversation. It doesn't feel unusual, it doesn't feel weird. And from a client's perspective, it feels good that they're saying, hey, here's why we worked together before. Here's why we're working together today. And here's why we may work together in the future. It's a nice little logical arc of discussion. Kelly?
Yeah. And it's such a simple, you could boil it down to like a really simple question and think of the impact of that question and what that means to the relationship. Here's why you signed on with us. Have we delivered on that promise? And if not, let's identify, and just ingraining deeper into like a much more meaningful conversation. I think 2 questions in that conversation could just be a total game changer.
And start
And
you
maybe,
down the path.
yeah, and maybe you would have missed it, right? Just a simple check-in that's different than how's it going? How's everything been? Right? A little bit deeper. Yeah.
And with those things in mind, it to me, as I've seen and helped companies go do this, and I know you have both too, is that if it comes across from the client success person that we're trying to push an idea on them, they tend to resist. However, if the mindset can be, we're looking to see if they have a problem that one of our products will solve, now we've moved to helping. And in their mind, yeah, we're still selling, but at the same time, what we're really doing is we're serving the client better. And that opens up the door to get many, but probably not all of these people to make the transition. Because I don't, you guys can comment on this. I don't know that everybody's going to make the shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A
It's
question that I've thrown out there, Mark, at the beginning of some of these mindset sessions is, let's all just write this down. Let's not say it out loud. Let's all write it down. What do you think your job today or even a year ago was in a client success role? What's like the number one guiding light? And what I consistently hear is we want to make sure that the customer is successful. And I let that sit for a second with them. Mm-hmm. You want the customer to be successful. What does that really mean? It means that we are here to make sure they're happy, they're getting the results they're looking for, and at the end of the day, their business is growing and executing. Why wouldn't us helping them identify additional problems, and if we have a really good solution to help them out, why wouldn't that also be part of that definition?
So, Steve, you just gave me a thought. I've been at a few orgs where we did various assessments, including, communication skills, personality styles, different things. And one of the common themes we often saw in our CS org versus the sales org was the CS org often, not always, tilted towards the helpers, the teachers, right? The people that really have that service mindset. Makes sense. That's not rocket science, right? Sales often more competitive, things like that. But the interesting thing about that is it's just like, keep that. That's great, because that
Yeah.
mindset of I have something that can help you actually really helps us be better salespeople, right? That's the attitude shift so often versus like, oh, I'm selling and is this really good? No, no, no. Keep that mindset. Help them. I have something else that could help them, which is why we have to have this conversation about a potential upsell, right? Or whatever's going to help them next. So anyway.
I love that, Kelly. In fact, I'm going to use some of Mark's words that I've heard him say before, and I've thrown this out to some of our CS folks of saying, do we think that we have some of the best products in the marketplace? And I've yet to hear any of them say yes. Maybe it's because they have their manager in the room. But bottom line is, I do believe they think they're working for a company that has some of the best products in the marketplace. And though that customer might not be buying all of those products, and this is where I'll inject a little Mark McGraw into there, isn't it our responsibility to make sure that they don't buy a subpar product for someone else? And if I'm doing my job of making sure my customers are successful, it should be for products they're using and products they're not using, and to protect them from some of those other folks out there that might not be selling them the best product to help them execute. And that seems to resonate really well with the CS team. And I'm like, see, we're not selling, we're servicing, we're helping. That's our jobs.
You know, a little bit of a different topic, but you gave me another idea. Something else that I feel like is really important here is we've talked about all of these different responsibilities in the role and the shift. And oh my gosh, you have to cover product, knowledge, updates, training over here, the QBR, are we hitting these marks? And then there's retention and renewal and expansion and all the things. Maybe there's a price increase to navigate a difficult conversation, right? All these different things. There's also the fact of, have they, in this role, there's all this stuff going on. Do they understand their own priorities? Right. And that's true for all of us in our roles. We have a lot to do and we got to figure out, the urgent and the important and all those things. But I think that's a real, do they have permission to adequately prioritize both at that zoomed out territory level, looking at all accounts and zooming in to get closer into, okay, what do we need here? Right. And having these more in-depth conversations where in cases too, I've seen so often they don't know that they have the permission to say, delegate, I need help. Maybe it is calling in other people in the org, so there's a lot here that I think is still evolving too in that role of how do we help them make the most of their time? They've got a lot of work to do. Yeah.
And I think you're alluding to the fact that sometimes this person who is a CS role, they don't feel like they can bring up anything new because they're not 100% implemented on what the customer's already bought. And the reality is the customer doesn't have to be 100%. They can't be 10%. Okay. In the sense of the customer needs to be happy enough that they would want to explore other options.
Right.
But sometimes I've seen the CS person be resistant to bring up expansion opportunities simply for the fact that they don't feel like they've executed perfectly. Nobody executes perfectly. There's always something. So, anyway, thoughts from either of you about that element?
Well, I'll just throw out, and I'll protect the innocent, even though that would be a celebration of their skill set. But I'm talking with a client who asked me, hey, do you have any ways in which we can train folks to think about renewals and expansion differently? Because they may be saying, hey, we think this account's going to churn. So what do we do to protect it? And I said, there's a mindset issue right there. Do you need to protect it, or should you treat it like every other client and go, yeah, maybe there's some challenges happening with the existing setup of our products and solutions, but we can figure that out. We can solve that. And it's my job to make sure that we get the product to do exactly what you're expecting. At the same time, there are new priorities and there are new challenges happening to your business today. I need to also ask you about that even while we're repairing this product or solution, because whether I ask you about that or not, that problem is real to you. So who is better equipped to probably help you out on that. I already know who you are. I have the relationship. We've already doing business together. I'm already plugged into your company and we have a good enough relationship. Why don't we explore that as well? So every renewal should always talk about expansion. Every potential churn account should be talking about expansion because why not? We're already here and we may find more opportunities that will solve and fix the relationship problem.
One of the clients I was talking with actually about 2 days ago about this very issue, we were back and forth over the fact that in their world, their customers are buying predominantly, let's say, product A. And we were back and forth over the fact that if the customer is buying product B, C, and D and A, the retention just goes through the roof. Because if, to your point, they stop needing A for some reason, but you still have B, C, or D, there's still a reason to be talking to that customer. There's still a reason for engagement at that point. And so you don't lose the thread of the client and the potential to have conversations with them if the only product that you have, the need went away or for whatever reason they don't need it or don't want it anymore. That makes sense?
It does. And to your point, like things change, right? I bought this product from you maybe 18 months ago and it was solving my problem for 12 months. But for the last 6 months, that's not my problem anymore. I need to reshift my budget. A lot of people will immediately go, oh, business over. It's done. Trying to ring the bell and go find a new client. But the answer to that is what other problems do you have that we can solve? And this is a constant evolution of challenges. I should be talking about today and into the future about how I can continue to help solve for you.
And you're making me laugh because in some cases, the implementation is so long that the client needs to continue to remind the customer why they're buying it in the first place. They forget because the implementation, that's just the nature of some implementations. Kelly, other thoughts around this? What else is going through your head around this?
What you just said reminded me of painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? Like, you work on it and you get there and it's like, oh, great. Time to start over. And maybe this time we need to use a slightly different, I don't know if they change there, but yeah, I was thinking about 6 years ago, we all remember where we were at 6 years ago, I'm sure in some fashion or another with what changed with COVID, but that was such a perfect example of this. Like that was dramatic in a lot of verticals, depending on where you are, but oh my gosh. Okay. Now we have to have the lens of how do we adapt? And I think having that, again, the openness of adaptation, businesses change, customer needs change, customers sort of buying perspective changes over time too, right? They're more educated than ever. They can do a lot on their own without us. So how do we really maximize our time with them? That's just an important piece of it too.
Hey, one thing I think that we need to take a minute and talk about here is when we think about expansion, there's a lot of ways that somebody in a CS role could expand an opportunity. Let's talk about some of those because there might be some that people are not thinking about that would be beneficial here. Steve, you want to take the first pass at it? What are some of them that come to your mind as far as how a CS person might expand an existing account?
Yeah, it's such a deep topic. I'm glad you brought this up, Mark. So let's start off with the easy one. It could just be expansion of the existing program or solution you're selling them. Let's say we closed them on $100,000 utilization of a seat for a SaaS platform. Well, now their needs have grown and we need to move from 100,000 to a $500,000 or $1 million, right? So it could just purely be expansion of the existing solution. Then it could be we have a whole house of products and you're just buying one from our product suite. And you have unique challenges where we have other products that can help you with those challenges and execute. Then you might have multiple divisions in your company where there's different product sets for your business. And so
for us, the seller,
right? I might be talking about digital marketing, but you also might have some services needs or some creative needs, which normally might not exist in my vein of product suites. But let's say I have 6 or 7 different product suites. Now I got to think in a completely different way of the way we can execute for you. Then you might actually have a company that does a lot of M&A, which is mergers and acquisitions. And maybe there's other companies within your product array that it's way off the reservation of what you're used to selling, but there's revenue growth opportunities out there that could exist. So those, in my mind, those are just you kind of layers upon layers upon layers of different ways in which you could expand.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that with M&A and, private equity and all of these partners and sister companies and things like that, which could go way beyond the scope of the CS person's responsibility to go, make those connections. But that's that whole skill set, right? Of that being able to zoom out and think critically around, asking the right questions, what else is happening, things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of layers there. I think you got them all, Steve.
Well, as we brought that up, another one that came to mind is consulting services.
Yeah.
Or, additional technical services that might exist there, or implementation services, or even additional seats, right? If I'm buying 10 seats and now your company grew to 20, you need 20 seats. I mean, there's so many different ways to think about expansion. When we're working with clients, that's the number one thing we do is like, all right, what are all the things we could talk to them about? And where are their revenue opportunities? And a lot of times you create this huge map that exists out there. And now it's about how do we make this map simple, right? We can't make it complex.
Here's something about that too, right? On the sales side, the new business side, when you're bringing someone in, you don't always want to start with the largest possible scale because of timelines, right? Because of budget, because of different things. So it could be that there was huge opportunity from the get-go that just needs to be developed over time, and it needs to be sort of fostered and nurtured. So I feel like a lot of those opportunities are just ripe so often with
such a good point. Such a good point.
And Kelly, to that point, if you're a CS person, go talk to the person who originally sold it. Ask them, what was the original conversation around, and what was your original scope going to be? And what did they end up buying? That could be a good well to go check out, because maybe there's already 10 or 15 different ideas, and now you just need to keep bringing those up.
Total side tangent here, but it's important too. I think we've talked a little bit about AI and tech stack and the way we use our tools. This is a really good example of how invaluable some of the, our call recording tools, our note-taking tools, the way we capture this information, not only for ourselves, but for the handoff, for our partners within the team who can then refer back in a way that, gosh, back in the day, it was all in someone's notebook somewhere, and we know that, right? And pen and paper. So
that's a great point. And I could see that, Kelly, being done on two sides. One is on the sales side, listen to those recordings and say, all right, what other opportunities are over there? And of course, we could use AI to go do that. And then on the existing opportunities, let's say a CS person's meeting with an existing client, I bet the transcripts might start to pick up opportunities that the customer brought up. If the AI knows the context of the business and all the things that the business does, the AI might pick up an opportunity that the CS person might have missed. And what a great opportunity to do some coaching and training around that, so they can follow up and ask better questions next time.
Amen.
I would encourage anyone that's implementing these things, don't leave it to the CS person to go come up with all of the different ways to expand. Give them a roadmap. Show them the battle plan for the types of things that they could be looking for. Make a grid out of it. We call it the product depth matrix, but make a grid out of it and make it easy. Give them a roadmap and a playbook for what to go look for when they do go expand. There's a lot of facets to this thing, and getting it right in the communication, getting it right in terms of how it gets rolled out, how it gets messaged from a management point of view. Ultimately, all of these elements come together in helping to maximize and generate the most revenue with the employees that you have. A lot of clients, a lot of people measure revenue per employee. And that's part of what this is driven to go do, is how do we increase the revenue per employee by having more people generate more revenue.
I have a question for the two of you. So we start at the very beginning. You said, we talk about we're sales training, right? But we're we're sales training. We're all customer facing frontline training, right? And that's what we do. Does it make sense to evolve that language more, or do we just keep working on making sales a great thing, right? Like, it's okay to have sales in your role. You don't have to be afraid of that. I'm just curious what you two think about that.
It's a good point. Steve, you want to take it first?
Well, Mark, we've been working together for over a decade, well over a decade. And for those of you that don't know the story, I brought Mark into the organization that I was in, and we just hit it off and did some amazing things at that company. But what happened with Mark is he started off with sales and then moved into client development. And I think at one point you were doing account management, and then we moved you through multiple different layers of the organization. And that was the first time that I had that epiphany, Kelly, of going, this is not really sales training. This is actually communication and psychological training. And it teaches you how to communicate with other folks and influence the outcome. That's all this is. And so should Sandler change its name from Sandler Sales to Sandler Communication? I don't know. But I would say that us as coaches, it's not just about sales. We can work with engineering departments. We can work with creative departments. We can work with HR. Our limits are limitless. And meaning, if you want to communicate better and you want to be able to influence the outcome, not in a negative way, in a positive way where both people walk away in a better spot, that's what Sandler does.
Yeah, I think the inclusivity in the language is pretty important because, my joke has been that, the sales team so often gets so much spotlight and focus, right? If I'm going to date myself with this one, but the Brady Bunch, Marsha, right? All the attention on Marsha. And if you get it, you get it. But it's true. And so I've been really, anyway, it's just an interesting thing. I've been thinking about, gosh, I want to make sure that our partners understand we got you.
Yeah.
We got you covered,
It is interesting. Our clients, certainly, our clients do start to see us as being able to help with other things because of the skill sets we bring. Case in point, and this one blew me away. A few years ago, we were teaching negotiating training to the sales team. One of the general managers was sitting in on the session and asked me if I would train their purchasing department on the same stuff. So I had the opportunity to work for the other side for a little bit and learned a ton. But to your point, the skill sets are the skill sets. And the key thing, I think, for this to be successful is setting the expectations, creating a good environment where we can have a good conversation with each individual, determining whether or not they're going to be interested in doing this, giving them the protection and the space to be honest with the answer. And if they're highly resistant, it doesn't mean that they can't do the job, but it just means that now being on the lookout for who is on the break, the willing and able side of things. And ultimately then providing the skills necessary to be able to help somebody navigate the conversation so it's consultative and it's not salesy. So when we can piece all of those things together, there is, to me, a tremendous opportunity to increase revenue per employee and help everybody recognize new opportunities. So it's a cool topic to me. I'll get some final thoughts from both of you on this. But it's a cool topic to me, and it's one that we keep seeing over and over. And maybe if somebody's listening and they're not thinking about this, maybe they need to be thinking about it at that particular point. So we'll start to wrap up with this episode. Kelly, any final thoughts that you have as if you're putting a bow on any of this? What's your big takeaway?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at how much of these threads pull through regardless of vertical, right? So we're seeing variations on this theme, which is just really interesting to stay ahead of and keep asking these questions to dig deeper into what's going on at the org level. So that's one thing that's on my mind. And the other thing is, I love working with different roles, including people that maybe these are some newer ideas, right? So it's, to me, it's like, what a cool way to expand and grow your skill set and, maybe jump into some things that are a little scary at times, but like you're going to be so much better off for it. So anyway, I think there's just a lot of really cool, yes, there's a lot of challenge ahead and also a lot of really cool opportunity for people on an individual and role level.
It's a great point. There's personal development for these people and them developing new skills for their ability to expand business.
Yeah.
And Steve?
Yeah, I would say if you're a CS person listening to this, or you're a CS manager, or you're a sales manager, like this is a trend I don't think that's going to go away. It's going to continue to evolve, and it may even evolve into a much larger responsibility. I would say don't be afraid of it. I think this is a natural evolution of where these organizations are going. Lean into it, get excited about it. And to your point, it's a growth opportunity. I've also worked with organizations to help them refocus the compensation plan so you can earn more and start to get a little bit of commission because you've got your hand inside of that wheel of making this execute properly. So there's a lot of cool things about it. So if you can shift your mindset to say, I'm already doing these things, now I'm going to get compensated for it. Know that there are opportunities to improve your skills, right? And these aren't things that sometimes we're intuitively doing. So there are skill sets that you can learn to become a better consultant. And it's simple, easy stuff. Again, some of it you might already be doing. And then the final thing for it, especially for a manager or somebody that's trying to execute this, don't forget that we have to teach them on the process and best practices. You have to have a process for them to follow because they're not used to this new process. And then there's best practices and skill sets that we need to give to them.
Excellent. Well said. Well said by both of you for this. So cool topic. We'll have us back and we'll do this again for some other topics down the road. But we wanted to put this out to everybody to help other organizations and other people that are thinking about expanding capabilities for their CS teams and selling more. If there are situations where we could be of help, we always appreciate those and always look forward to helping those organizations. So we have the team to help that out for sure. So with that, again, thank you both for being on this show, and we'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.